we don't have the information to be able to give to MTL for them to make their decision. And then overall, we are not in a position to provide information to the community to help the community make their decision. So we're working through the process. We've got a long ways to go. As you see, we're maybe year 4 from where we first started, but we only have 2 years of meteorological data at this point. And there's more meteorological data that we need. We will undoubtedly, right now our permit for meteorological towers are good for 3 years, which means under permit we only have 1 more year of data collection. We probably want more than that, and so we'll likely be looking to extend those permits. As I said, there's more information to collect, more work to be done, but we're working our way through the process. It's evolutionary. It's not feasible to launch in and try and do all of these things at once. Various decisions build on each other, and we're working through the process. And then the other big piece that we're going to be doing here shortly, we've already started to some extent, Mike Clayton will talk about, and that's our environmental study.
Thanks, Don. My name is Mike Clayton. I work in the Permitting and Environmental Group with Iberdrola Renewables, and I'm responsible for coordinating and managing all of the environmental studies, wildlife studies, cultural resources, visual, sound, shadow, kind of the whole suite of studies and surveys that need to be done in order for us to evaluate the site and then get together permit applications for the state and federal agencies that oversee these projects. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're doing now and have just completed at the site, and then get into some of the other studies that we have planned a little bit later this year and into next year. And I can talk all night and half of tomorrow about all this stuff, so I'm just going to kind of touch on, like I said, things that we've done, kind of overview of some of the stuff we're going to do, and be around all night. So if anybody has any questions or wants to know a little bit more about how we do something or how we do some of these surveys, you can come up and ask. I'm also here with a couple people. Noel Dodge is from Stantec. He's been doing some of the bird studies on site that I'm going to be talking about. Meg Loud is here from West. He's been managing some bat stuff that I'm going to be talking about. If you have any bird or bat questions, maybe you can talk to them afterwards. I'm sure they'd be happy to speak to you about them. So we started doing a couple things here in the past couple of months. We just finished the field work for a raptor migration survey. Raptors, a general term for birds of prey, hawks, owls, vultures, falcons, those kinds of birds. So we do surveys where we have a couple people on the site, certain number of times over the course of a couple months, and they document all the raptors flying through the project area or in the vicinity of the project area. They identify what type of bird it is, if they can, how old it might be, what kind of behavior is it just soaring, and what elevation. So they take all these different features and take it all down. The study, we just finished the field work on it. It was coordinated with, see if this is going to stay. Winds blow, go figure. Must be a good sign, though. Why did this happen to Jenny? So, yeah, we just finished the study, the field work for it. It was closely coordinated with the biologists at the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources. We came up with a study plan, submitted it to them. They reviewed it. They said, well, what if you add a couple more points here and there? And we did that, and we just finished the spring survey. We're going to be doing another one in the fall. That goes from end of August through October. So same kind of thing. The raptors typically migrate from the south to the north this time of year. Is that roughly right? Maybe. And the other, they go down to Florida in the winter. So we're working on that. We are also in the middle of what's called a breeding bird survey. We identify, I think we have about 33 locations throughout the project area where we'll go out and document breeding birds, so birds that are breeding in the area or in the project area nearby. They document those based on visual observations, calls, that kind of thing. And we have about 33 locations. We'll do surveys in the beginning of June and then do another round of surveys at the end of June. And again, that was closely coordinated with biologists from the A&R. Submitted them a plan, they provided comments, we addressed them. So that'll be done at the end of June. And then we are also currently doing some bat acoustic monitoring surveys where we set up some microphones at select locations throughout the site. And they, at night, right before sunset, right around sunset, they go on and they record bats. They make calls. They make calls when they're flying around and searching for food. And these microphones record them all night. And then some of our bat biologists can listen to those, the recordings and identify the bats to species. And we collect all that data and analyze it and submit that to the A&R. We had them out on the site this afternoon and it got rained on, but that was okay. So all these studies we're doing are all very closely coordinated with the A&R, and when we're done with them, submit reports to them, get their comments and address them. Some other things that we're looking to do here a little bit later this year, we will have to do a rare, threatened, and endangered plant survey that we will coordinate with the A&R. We'll survey the areas where we think we might have roads or turbines or electrical lines to make sure there aren't any rare endangered plants. We'll have to do winter habitat surveys to document moose habitat, deer wintering habitat. We'll look for signs of bear and bear habitat. This fall we'll be doing wetlands and stream delineation where we'll go throughout the area. We think we're going to be putting the roads and the turbines and mapping out all the wetlands and streams and documenting the quality of the streams, some other characteristics there. We'll be doing archaeological surveys on the site. We'll be doing architectural and historic structure surveys where we will identify all the buildings, homes, other structures 50 years of age or older, or any structures that might be on the National Register of Historic Places or eligible for that listing. We'll document those, take pictures. We'll work with the Vermont Division of Historic Preservation to identify all those areas. Some other things we're going to be getting into later this year, a visual assessment where we'll have, once we secure a layout, we're going to assess the visibility of the project throughout the area here, all the local towns. We'll do computer-generated simulations so you can see what the project might look like from various locations throughout the area. There'll be mapping to show where the project would be visible or not visible. So all that would be part of what's called a visual impact assessment, and that would be submitted as part of a permit application that would get filed whenever we're ready to file it. And we have to assess the sound that would come from the project. There's pretty strict guidelines that the state imposes that we need to design our project within. We'll assess any shadow impacts. When the sun's shining down, the blades are turning, it's something called shadow flicker. We'll have to make sure that's not going to be a concern or an issue. So these are kind of all the things we're going to be doing. Most of these other studies will be starting later this summer, early fall, and we'll probably continue into next spring by the time we get around to finishing them. Some of them need to be done certain times a year, so we just need to target the right season or window to be doing all those. So I think that's about it for now. Turn it back to Jenny. Again, I'll be around. If you want to talk about it, be happy to.
Thank you, Mike and Don. So just in closing, I wanted to sort of follow up with what they're talking about here, some of the details and where we are in the process, and that we still have a lot of work to do. And our current goal is to have our work accomplish some of the things that they talked about here, because I think two of the big questions is where, what does the layout look like, where would these be, and also, as Mike mentioned, a visual impact assessment, where would we be able to see them from? And the other the other part is the economic benefits associated with a project, with a wind project. And so our goal is that this fall, we would have another meeting like this, I guess it depends when it's fall, if we can be outdoors, but to have a meeting this fall where we can show you a layout, a visual assessment, and provide you with an economic benefits summary, or at least a proposal of what it could potentially look like here for Grafton based on the number of turbines in Grafton. So as we've said here, we are working hard to have a layout for you and take all this information and get all this work done. We don't have it this evening, as you can see, but we will have it for you this fall as we continue to accomplish everything here that we've talked about. The other thing I wanted to mention as well is all of the projects that have been built in Vermont have gone to a local vote on the project. And Iberdrola Renewables intends to provide you with a project proposal and allow you to vote on the project and respect the vote that you, respect your vote, whether it's for a project or not. However, we have to do all of the work that Mike and Don just talked through over the next year in order to be able to give you a project proposal. And we have no intentions of filing a project permit application, a certificate for public good, in advance of you voting on the project. If you vote no, then we don't file. We recognize we have to do a lot of work here over the next year in order to be able to give you a proposal that would show all these benefits and impacts that we're talking about here associated with all these studies, be able to, show you what the economic benefits would look like, and we can talk in general this evening about the other projects in the state and what those projects are benefiting, how they are benefiting the communities through real property tax and community benefit agreements. But in the fall, we'll have an actual, number of proposed, preliminary layout, a number of turbines, and be able to quantify that for Grafton. And so that's where what we are working toward. And if everything stays on schedule, I know that if we were to actually finish all of our studies and be in position to provide a proposal to you the middle or later part of next summer in 2016, we would look to ask you to be able to vote on a project proposal next fall. To be in a position to present it to you and then give you an opportunity to vote next fall. And the reason I say next fall is because there's, as you've heard Don say here, everything builds off of something else. So if something changes, we'll communicate that. And I think what I also want to say is that we plan to have regular meetings like this. And as we get information, we give it to MTL. As we get information, we give it to you. And so as these studies are completed and we have reports and we have information to share, we'll have meetings like this, or we can have individual meetings, smaller group meetings, whatever folks prefer, in order to talk through the results, the impacts, and how they impact potential proposal here. So we are getting to the point where we will start having very specific information starting this fall for you to consider for this property, this project. So I'll stop there, and thank you all again for your time this evening.
Okay, at this point, we'll move into the question and answer phase. Before we do that, just a couple logistical notes. If anyone needs a restroom, the two facilities are located inside the lodge, in the front door to your right. Also, from 7 o'clock on, is that correct, Jenny? Food is ready, so you can get up and help yourself move to the line at any time during this portion or the next portion. The next approximately 45 minutes, I'd like to give residents of Grafton the opportunity to pose questions to either representatives of Iberdrola or Meadowsend. Can I get a show of hands of how many people are intending to question or comment, just so I can know how long to limit? Okay. All right. So I'd ask that you be as brief as you can, no more than 2 minutes, just to give people enough time. We'll start right away. Dave, go ahead.
Okay. I have two questions, really. One is a simple one, and I know you're not committed to telling us what the tax impact would be, but what is one of these generators assessed at? What's it worth in terms of the tax assessment? Just one.
Well, it's not really the way the tax. Jeff, do you want to?
Sure. I'm looking for, just a
Yeah.
simple way of
Yeah.
processing.
Hi, I'm Jeff Hand. I'm an attorney that works with Iberdrola. So we'll have a chance to talk about tax benefits at the next
I
one of the
get
next
that,
meetings.
but you must know what one of these things
So the-
cost in Sheffield.
Right.
One unit, what does it
The way
cost?
that the state of Vermont taxes them is based on kilowatt hour production.
Okay,
It's taxed at a mill rate of 0.003 cents. What that translates into in different communities, for example, in Sheffield, there are about 16 turbines, 40 megawatts. The town of Sheffield, they are getting about $500,000 a year in direct tax payments. I don't have it broken, I mean, the math is
because I know you don't
16.
know how many would be aggregate in
Yeah.
Grafton.
Yeah, that's
so.
right.
All right, my other question then, hydrological issues. Grafton over the years, and I'm not talking just about Irene, but repeatedly has been hit with flooding. Most of the flood water happens to come from the area in which you're proposing to work. So I'm assuming in your environmental studies or whatever, you considered this, and so how do you propose you're going to deal with that? Because I've toured the site in Leominster, and I realized, there's a lot of cutting and roads, and so, there's not a lot to hold the water naturally. I mean, the natural stuff has all been removed, so how do you propose to deal with that?
We'll do a pretty intense engineering assessment and design, and that needs to be done in accordance with the state of Vermont manual for stormwater and runoff. That's a little out of my league. I don't focus on the engineering, but we will have to work with the state to make sure all the roads meet their standards for stormwater and runoff and erosion control, and there'll be stormwater management ditches and other stormwater management measures that need to be incorporated into the design of all the roads that needs to be done. And that'll be part of the plans that'll be submitted to the state for their review and their approval. And then during construction, we would need to be monitoring to make sure those designs are being implemented appropriately, and they are free to come out at any time during construction and make sure we're doing what the plans say we're going to be doing. And then, they also issue a couple of different permits that ensure that what we submitted meets their requirements. There's a stormwater permit that we'll need to, that's a lengthy process we'll need to go through. And there's another approval called a 401 water quality certificate. And they'll issue that only after they've reviewed our project and ensured that it wouldn't have any kind of impact on water quality, or there wouldn't be any kind of excessive runoff from stormwater. And on a lot of these projects, what we've seen is the logging roads and those kinds of features that are out there they're not designed to an agency's standards. We have to design it to the agency's standards. So it's on us to make sure that they're done right. And a lot of times you see an improvement in the water quality, because instead of having a logging road where you have a skidder running up and down the hill the whole time, and you have a real road with stormwater ditches and other maintained water bars and basins and all the things that the state needs us to do to make sure we're not going to have a runoff flooding issue, and we might even control that a little better than
And maybe if I can just add briefly, I'm not a civil engineer, but I've been associated with quite a few of these engineering efforts. The state of Vermont, similar to most states in the Northeast, but very dissimilar from a lot of other states across the country, has a very, very rigorous requirement as far as the civil design of a project before you can even apply for a permit. We typically assume that we're going to have the civil design, all of the road engineering, to about 90% of what you would need to actually build the project. That has to all be done. It has to be reviewed and meet all of the state criteria before you can even file for a permit. So as Mike indicated, it's a very thorough, extensive process. There are a huge amount of regulations, and it is a significant undertaking to actually design these roads and have that in the permit application that goes in. It's a significant expense. It's a significant effort in preparing an application, and we take it very seriously. It is important. If it's not done right, there is a significant amount of history on existing wind projects, and we take that into consideration. The agencies take that into consideration, although I'm not a civil engineer, my perspective of watching our civil engineers and our engineering consultants in preparing these roads, they take it very seriously and work very hard to ensure that it's going to provide good performance over the life of the project.
Can I get
Anybody
a,
wants to look at these? They're up here.
can I just get a show of hands? How many people here are not Grafton residents? Okay. Jenny, my understanding is the intent is for Grafton residents to exchange information with Meadowsend and Iberdrola. I'm just trying to prioritize my column.
I work in Grafton. My family is right below. They have land in Townsend, and I live in Cambridgeport. It's just
Okay, does anyone have any objection?
No.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, okay, I have a question because one thing that I haven't heard addressed is the process, say that project will go ahead. The process of bringing in all of the equipment, these, as I understand, huge turbines, I imagine they have to be on big trucks, the increase of traffic, and the roads that we have here, like going through Townsend, Route 30, 121, and then the building of roads up to where that is, that seems to me like that could be incredibly problematic for people living in the area. And I was wondering if you knew, A, how much time something would cost, I mean, it would take to do something like that, and B, how big are the roads that have to be built for access, and what is the, it's more information about that part of the process, because that does impact all of the people in the area. That's all.
Sorry, I wasn't standing up, but I'm not even sure what's down. Okay, there. Thank you.
I'm leaving.
I can address that in generality. Obviously, the detail is farther down the road. We haven't really started investigating the off-site logistics as far as bringing the turbine components in. You're right. The components are very large. The equipment is big. The trucks are large, and the volume of trucks is not insignificant. It has to be taken into consideration. Before or as part of establishing the feasibility of a project, a complete transportation survey is done. You don't know where the turbine components are coming from because you don't know who the turbine vendor would be or where they would manufacture. Those obviously have an influence depending on where they're coming from. Are they going to come from truck across a couple states? Are they going to come by rail at some point and then truck to the site? Those are all questions that we don't know at this point. But associated with that complete transportation survey, a route is established. All of the issues associated with that route are looked at as far as bringing these trucks and components in. It may require widening of certain roads. It may require relocation of signs and power poles. It may require temporary relocation or raising of power lines or communication lines. It may require some rebuilding or increasing the strength of bridges and culverts. We haven't looked at any of that, but we do that thoroughly for every project that we build. Once we get to the site itself, then it's a matter of where the road is constructed. As I indicated, we would like to use existing roadways as much as we can for just bringing components in. Typically, the road is about 16 feet wide. requires very careful design as far as the grades. These trucks are large, the components are heavy. The length of the blades is long, so the turning radius has got to be large. All of that is evaluated in the design of the project. Once you get to the project area itself, where the turbines are, during construction, the roads are wider than that. The roads are more like 36 feet wide. That's because we use a very large crane to erect the turbine. The crane itself is assembled on site, and it's 32, 34 feet wide. And you want to be able to move it from one turbine location to another, rather than having to spend a week tearing it down, move it, and another week putting it back together again. So the roads are wide, about 38 feet wide during the construction period. After the construction is done, those are reclaimed. All the road material is removed. The ground is decompacted, if you will, to loosen the soil up again because it's been compressed and it's going to inhibit vegetation growth. All of that is restored back to a 16-foot width for the final project.
And how long, you know from other projects, I presume, how long that process of bringing in X number of turbines and setting them up takes?
Typically they will look for a project this size. I would anticipate probably 5 turbines a week, maybe 4. So depending on the number of turbines in the project, which we haven't established at this point, they would be moving in at about 4 or 5 turbines a week. It's not a year-long process. It's weeks.
Even with all the construction involved?
Even with all the construction involved. Kevin, Kevin is a landowner from Leominster, and he has observed this very closely.
Yeah, we have a wind farm on our property. We worked on it. December 26th of 2007, we cut our first tree. We have 7 miles of road. On November of the next year, not quite 12 months, we had 12 turbines in place and running. We did on town roads, we had one corner that we had to smooth out to make a turn. Other than that, in public roads, they were fine.
And I think, Lynn, just the one other thing I would add is that in order to use the town roads, in addition to the other permits and permissions you've heard us need, we need permission to use those. So we would be seeking consent from the town to be able to use the roads and have an agreement and any repairs and anything associated with pre-construction surveys and all of that. So we will be needing permission in order to use the town roads.
Carol?
So potentially you're saying the road, say 121 or Townsend Road, could possibly not be wide enough and you would have to widen some of these roads in town in order to get these 38-foot.
No.
You did say you would possibly widen some.
There
of
may
those
be some sections.
because they're not 38 feet wide.
They only need to be 16.
16 feet wide is what's needed for delivery. The 38 feet is only up between the turbines themselves.
So on the site.
And so typically the improvements to bring the components to the site are limited in nature. It's sharp turns. It may be points where things are compressed. And it may be something in the way of a bridge or a culvert that can't withstand the weight. But it's not a major reconstruction of offsite roads.
Okay, next question.
Chris?